you do write a book in a modular way, it's you're an author. It's easier to do.
Yeah.
Because you can have little milestones along the way and feel you've actually achieved something.
Yeah.
And so I wrote the first chapter as a tryout for Andy, and he read it and he came back and went, "Whoa, Nev, it's all right, but it's missing a little something. It's a bit dead." I said, "Well, what do you suggest?" He said, "Well, you're not in it." And I said, "Well, I don't think I should be in it." He said, "But the bit you've written about is about you as well. You're in it. So make it feel more personal," which is what I did. And later on, he told me I shouldn't have done that. Such is life.
How were Colin and Dave about it? Did they go along with the idea? Did they very much, think this is the right way to go? Or?
Colin was up for it. Dave wasn't.
Yeah.
It was getting a bit hairy. They were in the recording phase on Apple Venus and Star, but at the time it was still supposed to be one album, and it was going to come out in time for the book. And Dave was feeling a bit racked off with life in general and said, "I don't really want to be involved." So we found a way around that later. But for most of it, I would get on the train every week from London, go down to Swindon, sit in Andy's shed with Colin and Andy and run a tape machine, and we'd just go through it bit by bit by bit. And I've got those recordings somewhere, and they're hilarious.
I'll bet.
Yeah, both from Andy's outpourings and their banter and Colin's flatulence, and which at one point you can hear us clearing the room. Because we used to have these, I don't know why, Andy always served up curry soup for...
He likes curry. He likes a curry, a co-op curry.
But it's like a tinned curry soup.
Yeah.
We had a lot of that. And then I started piecing the book together. And in the end, John Leckie lent me he'd gone away on some big project, and so he said, would I look after his house in West Wickham? And I finished off the book there. And we sent it to Hyperion, and they went, far too long.
Right.
So the original draft is 50% longer than the...
Okay.
And Andy was really upset about that.
Right.
Because he wanted all that detail in there. And some of the songs have quite short snippets written about them, and they originally might have had 2 or 3 paragraphs.
There's a particular song that comes to mind that has one line written about it, which I guess we still can't talk about, and that's I Bought Myself a Lyrebird. You say in the book, contractually obliged not to talk about this song.
Yeah.
I assume that's still the same.
Yeah.
Did you at any point consider, or had you hoped maybe to talk to Terry or Barry at all for that project?
Yeah, we contacted both of them, and at the time neither of them wanted to.
Right.
And funnily enough, one night, years later, I was sitting on the top deck of a number 23 bus going around Paddington, and I looked at the guy sitting next to me and realised it was Barry. I said, "Hello, Barry," and he said, "Hello." And I said, "I'm Neville Farmer." He went, "Ah, yeah." He said, "Actually, the book was all right in the end." He said, "No, I quite enjoyed it. Well done." But it also helped hone down the story in a way.
Yeah.
To have Colin and Andy bashing against each other, which is what they'd done so well in all that writing time. And then Dave afterwards, he and I sat down together for a couple of days and went through everything, and he added in what he wanted to say as appropriate.
It must have been quite a difficult time, because obviously, as we're talking about the Apple Venus sessions, Dave's dissatisfaction with how everything was going on, and as you've just explained, his deciding to talk to you at a later date about those songs for the book. It must have been a very difficult time. I mean, very difficult to actually. That whole atmosphere must have been pretty tense.
Yeah, I guess it was. I mean, I seem to remember it was. I know. While they were working, they were just working, and that's fine. And when Dave's working, he's just so focused. There wasn't really a problem there, but there was definitely quite a bit of tension around. Hayden Bendel, who's producing, is such an easygoing man and has a great way of bringing calm into a room. So, so that was fine. We also did some sessions. I think it was a session at Abbey Road with Mike Batt.
Yeah.
Which I was there for. And there were about 5 or 6 of us there as well. I think Peter Fitzpatrick was there and maybe a couple of other people. But yeah, there was concern as well because Andy wanted to do 2 albums worth of material. And I was buried in the book and trying to get that finished in time for a 1 album thing. And so, you know, when the book eventually, I mean, I also supplied endless imagery for the book, which Andy gave me tons of. And quite a lot of that got rejected. A lot of it ended up printed very small. Andy and I were both unhappy about the paper they printed it on because the photos don't come out well. And it was mainly because Hyperion were a bit miffed that their original plan had gone awry because there was no album. And it was another year before there was an album.
Sure.
And suddenly there's Apple, Venus and Wasp Star. But by then, Hyperion had gone through their marketing cycle and they'd flown the band out to Japan.
Yeah.
There's a Japanese version of it with my name spelt wrongly on it. And it's much better than the Hyperion one to look at. It's really quite...
That's much nicer, isn't it?
Beautiful. Yeah. And Andy said that he signed more books than he did albums while he was out there. But the book did well enough. It was #1 in the Q book charts and was in the top 10 for 6 months. And Helter Skelter in Denmark Street with a sub-publishers, and they went into second print and everything. But we never saw a penny back from Hyperion, who said we haven't sold any, and which is kind of curious.
Yeah.
And so Andy, of course, once again got stung.
The photos, the images that are used in the book, how did the selection for those come about?
We had a huge library of material. I think the best stuff isn't the photos, it's Andy's drawings.
Sure.
Andy's illustrations are brilliant. Hyperion didn't want Andy's picture of Todd Rundgren as a cart horse.
I wonder why.